This program is a presentation of UCTV for educational and non-commercial use only.
Good morning and welcome to the Roger Revelle Centennial Symposium. This is without a doubt the highlight of the scientific side of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of Roger's birth, and indeed one of the great highlights in Scripps history. My name's Tony Hammett. I'm the 10th director of Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego. Also with us today are directors 8 and 9, my colleagues Charlie Kennel and Ed Frieman. Welcome, gentlemen. We'll hear from Ed in just a minute. Yesterday we celebrated Roger the man, who people knew and admired. And today we're going to pay tribute to Roger's scientific contributions to the world, and they are many. Our symposium today actually tries to cover the areas mentioned in the citation for Roger's Medal of Science. That's a long list of fields. As you know, Roger was the best of the best, a true Renaissance man. He was an extraordinary scientist, a Navy leader, an outstanding teacher, and a great humanitarian. He helped establish the UC San Diego campus, and he was, long before me, the 5th director of Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Unfortunately, as a youngster, I never had the pleasure of sitting down with Roger and absorbing his wisdom and vision directly. But the vision rings loud and true, and I do feel the benefit of Roger's presence every single week of my 2.5 years as director. The people, the students, the excellence, the wonderful fleet he established for us, access to the sea and now the sky through robotic means, the relationships, the creation of UCSD, even IOC, for those of you who know those initials. From his roots in oceanography came his increased involvement in the kind of research, education, and service at the very heart of the mission of Scripps that transcend traditional disciplinary boundaries. Roger is considered one of the true pioneers of climate change research, and as a matter of fact, his research on climate change was a major factor in his selection for the National Medal of Science, which he received from the first President, George Bush, in 1990. The medal citation reads, for his pioneering work in the areas of carbon dioxide and climate modification, oceanographic exploration, presaging plate tectonics, and the biological effects of radiation in the marine environment, studies of human population growth and global food supply. We'll try to touch all those topics today. We've invited you here to honor Roger's legacy, but more than that, to highlight the influence of his work, honored and admired by so many, that his work continues to have on the scientific community, on society at large. A legacy that will carry through today and long into our future and our children's future. So we're not taking a static snapshot of what Roger did. We're talking about real current events today that are based on the things that Roger started. We're honored to have among us today many distinguished scientists and policymakers in our audience, as well as speakers, to discuss climate change, California in the ocean, energy independence, and the crucial role science and technology is playing in tackling today's global challenges. I do want to thank our friends and fellow scientists, Rick Spinrad from NOAA, who was going to be here anyway, but he stepped in to be a speaker, and our friend Nate Lewis from Caltech. I thank all of you for being here and sharing your thoughts and perspectives and to interact with each other during our breaks. You are our current leaders, and the students in this room are our future leaders, and I'm glad you're here to celebrate our future by looking at Roger's contributions and talking today. Secondly, I'd like to thank the additional friends who've made Roger Revelle Centennial Symposium a reality. In this financial environment, it's very important that we not only don't spend taxpayers' money on this, California money on this symposium, but we are seen not to do so. So today's symposium has been very kindly funded by our agency friends, starting with the Office of Naval Research, which Roger helped establish in the 1940s. Thank you and welcome to Frank Herr, and I think Linwood Vincent is also here from ONR. Thank you to the National Science Foundation and to NOAA. Thank you and welcome to Rick Spenrad, Steve Murawski, and Marty Ralph. And also thank you to the University of California Discovery Grants Program and to our own UCSD TV. In these trying economic times, we could not have supported this incredibly timely and meaningful symposium without this very generous external support. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Director Emeritus Ed Frieman, the 8th Director of Scripps, who brought Roger back to Scripps campus in the late 1980s. As director, Ed led the institution in vital new directions well ahead of their time and helped to make it the vital and thriving institution it is today. Ed.
Well, my homework assignment by Kathleen was to talk about Roger, the years when he came back to Scripps, and to compress it into 15 minutes, and I failed to do that. And the only way I could find to bring that together was something called ATSOG. Sort of sounds like the secret police of Tajikistan, but ATSOG means stands for On the Shoulders of Giants. And this came from a very intriguing and charming book by Robert Merton called On the Shoulders of Giants, where he traced the history of this saying down through the ages to Bernard of Chartres in the 12th century. And it tells the story of dwarfs standing on the shoulders of giants and thereby being enabled to see further. It was later taken up by Isaac Newton, no dwarf, and in our time by Stephen Hawking with regard to Einstein and others. So invoking ATSOG and Roger seemed the best way for me to be able to approach this. So perhaps we here, while we're not dwarfs, are standing on the shoulders of a giant who helped us to see further by raising penetrating questions about the world and the human condition. And as Tony said, we are still living and struggling with those to this day. So the Roger I got to know was actually for too short a number of years. He was a very complex man to me. And in street language, I would say he not only talked the talk, but he walked the walk. He saw himself in a direct historical continuum as an ocean explorer with Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal, who was active in the early 1400s. So I looked up Prince Henry, a little bit surprised to find that he was somewhat like the Right Admiral Sir Joseph Porter, the ruler of the King's Navy, who stuck to his desk and never went to sea. Prince Henry actually went to sea, but very, very close to the shore in the Mediterranean. But there was another aspect of Roger which I enjoyed. Some of his stories and sayings, one he said was, behind every successful man, there's a surprised mother-in-law. I especially enjoyed that one. But in talking about himself, he tended to be somewhat modest. He was interested in many things. He said that he was good at starting things, but not very good at finishing them. I shudder to think what it would have been like if he finished them. But so what did he start and what did he leave for us to finish? You'll hear much more about this all day long. It's a formidable and daunting list of challenges and operations. Global warming, you will certainly hear about. As you know, he called himself the grandfather of the greenhouse effect. He brought David Keeling here on measuring the buildup of CO2. You'll hear about that. He spoke out forcefully and publicly on that issue throughout his life. As you know, Al Gore is continuing in that tradition, and you'll hear more about that today. He helped start a major front-ranked university, our own UCSD. He pushed for sustainable development. They were couched in different words then, but through studies of population, energy, and global food supplies. He influenced the future of oceanography in many ways through helping found the modern Office of Naval Research. He cared about nuclear weapons, disarmament, and the world's poor and disadvantaged. So that's an enormous list of challenges for us to take up. But I think all the while, he had a very special regard for the young and as a teacher, and was delighted by their inquiring minds. But I'm also told that he enjoyed kissing all the young girls as they trooped by getting their diplomas at Revelle College. Part of that story I've heard, I don't know whether it's true or not, that he was delighted when hairstyles changed so that he could distinguish the boys from the girls. So when I became director in 1986, I quickly learned how much Scripps, 20-odd years or more after Roger left, was influenced, shaped by his vision, by his insights, and his drive. He had returned from Harvard then and was teaching on the main campus, but he spent time here at Scripps, walking around the halls as he usually did, talking to people, asking about what the researchers were doing. And I thought he belonged here with us, and I hoped that he would come home. So I asked Ellen then whether I could approach Roger without disturbing his life, the tranquility of his life. And her response was a very enthusiastic yes. So I did, and I was very selfish about it because I moved him into the office next door to me. And Tony will see next door to him an office is still with Roger's name. So I promptly took advantage of his presence and walked over to his office for quick director lessons that were often pithy and not repeatable, I'm afraid. But I also had to clear up some items that I had tripped across, things that he had done. But on the serious side of it, the most important things for me were very deep discussions we had concerning philosophical and direct discussions on long-range strategy and policy issues. So let me go over on the tripping side of it. I was surprised one day to receive a letter from the director of a sister oceanographic institution, the one that Tony mentioned, the one at Oregon State. And that letter graciously thanked us for allowing him to use our ocean for his ships and research. And on tracking back, I found that Roger had held a very high-level major conference here at Scripps. The president of the University of California was here. Many other high-level officials, and the title was really quite something. It was the position of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography in the university, state, and nation. I don't think we could get away with that, but the interpretation given to that by some was that it conveyed a message that California had a special responsibility or perhaps even a mandate for the care of the Pacific Ocean, and that Scripps would be the vehicle for exercising it. So that's why we got our letter from Oregon State. One of the more difficult strategy issues facing Scripps at that time was what our response should be to the winding down of the Cold War. It was taking place then. The Navy was a major supporter of Scripps research. In fact, the largest supporter for many, many years. It was abandoning blue water oceanography since the Soviet Strategic Missile Submarine Force was largely staying home then. We were not pointing our strategic missiles at each other. The attack submarine force ops tempo was decreasing. And the shift by the Navy to defense of the homeland, which would then emphasize coastal oceanographic research, was not yet doctrine. So we were in a very interesting position of seeing both sides of the equation where one does science for policy and you also look at policy for science. I think one of the outcomes of those discussions, and I've gone through the archives to try to see whether Roger ever talked about this in a way that exists in the archives. I haven't found it. So perhaps this is new. I do have some notes on this. But we agreed that to take advantage of this shift should be a new focus on the environment and climate. That would be our best strategy. That discussion eventually converged, and we thought jokingly about life emerging from the sea 3.5 billion years ago. Maybe Scripps should finally emerge from the sea. And we talked about an atmospheric science initiative that was strongly linked to climate as probably holding the most promise. Roger strongly recommended establishing our own policy group and linking the two. On this last, I'm afraid I was a disappointment to him. I think it's something Charlie would have liked, it's something that Tony would like, all of us directors would like, and we have not yet done that. So following this, in 1990, we were fortunate to be able to recruit Ram Ramanathan, who was then considered to be one of the world's leaders in atmospheric sciences, which really laid the groundwork for the atmospheric thrust that we have today. I'd like to talk a little bit about a program that Ram is involved in, because in many ways it looks as a model for exactly what Roger wanted us to do. It combines all of the elements. And I guess I would have liked to have assumed that somehow this was a direct historical linkage with the things that Roger espoused as he saw himself with Henry the Navigator. The point is that about half the world's population cooks with fuels like wood, dung, charcoal that release black carbon, methane, and ozone-producing gases, and exposure to these indoor pollutants in the poorest parts of India, China, and Africa according to the World Health Organization, result in the deaths of about 1.5 million, 1,600,000 young women and children. And although we have known for a long time that carbon dioxide is not the only contributor to global warming, it has become clear recently that black carbon, methane, et cetera, may be responsible for as much as 1/3 of global heating. And the project that RAM is launching will be officially launched later this month. It's called Surya, which is Sanskrit for solar, and will be a major undertaking involving Scripps, the United Nations Environmental Program, and other leading institutions, and it will work with communities in India. India, of course, was a place that Roger cared about, visited, spent time thinking about, and it will enable the communities to switch to solar cookers, biogas plants, and other clean cooking technologies to both reduce disastrous health effects and reduce global warming. And cell phones will be provided by Qualcomm at this point. They will be equipped with sensors. NASA's A-train of satellites will be overhead. And so one sees a mixture of just what Roger talked about, of science, of policy, of execution in a team. And in a sense, I think he would have very much approved of this. This whole area involves a major scientific consensus that's growing today, that the pace of climate change is exceeding the 2007 IPCC baseline, and great concerns that warming should be limited to 2 degrees C to avoid tipping points. The one issue that Ram is concerned about is the reduction of the Hindu Kush, Himalaya, Tibetan glaciers that are the headwaters of the major Asian river systems. I think that may be an Otsog story here, and it's not yet complete. So I would like to close with one story from Roger that he told me that I'm still puzzled by, and it still reminds me of Roger to this day. He was apparently fascinated by Gubbio. It's a small city in northern Italy where the KT boundary comes to the surface. You can actually see it. And you may remember that Luis Alvarez had attributed the death of the dinosaurs, the wiping out of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, to an asteroid hitting the Earth at the time of the KT boundary transformation. This was really abrupt climate change, if you will. But however, the part of the story that's a mystery to me is Roger was fascinated by the story of the wolf of Gubbio. That wolf was a marauder, attacked the town, and then until St. Francis heroically was able to convince the wolf to adopt the ways of peace. Eventually the wolf did that, walked around the town, and eventually was buried in hallowed ground. Why this story fascinated him remains a mystery to me today. Thank you.